Hello and welcome to the Knights of the Highlands as 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons characters, video 4. This one on Sir Diomedes Gargalon the Rampant. So here's, at this stage in the video, we've seen Sir Rem and we've seen Sir Wargle, Sir Geoffrey the Wargle, and so those are the two characters that to this point have been face-to-face introduced. Some of the other characters have been mentioned. There have been like knowledge checks and conversations with Rem to see about who else is in his order. So this starts kind of the blank pages for you and the people in my campaign. So in order to talk about the role that Sir Diomedes plays in the Ebonhold and in the order, I kind of have to like get to his character sheet, and it's going to be a little bit more of a lengthy explanation, and then we're going to look more at the Ebonhold itself. So I want to start with the model, and then I'll kind of do all of the lore and stuff that goes with it as we do the character sheet. So one thing I didn't do with Sir Geoffrey was talk about the specific paints that are on the model. So I want to mention that Diomedes has Leadbelcher, of course, all the metal. It's going to be on every model. The flesh is Rakarath flesh. There is some Mornfang brown, some Ceramite white. The gray is Mechanicus Standard Gray, some Abaddon Black, and a little bit there in the front of Mephiston Red. So that takes care of the colors. And so let's kind of dig at this model. The first thing you're probably going to notice about Dio's model is that he's holding a liquor bottle. Now this is not just a kind of, if you know Dio, kind of an elbow to his proclivities for the drink, but also a hint at what he does for the Knights of the Highlands. And also in the real person's real life, he's a bartender and a little bit of a mixologist. So it's a hint to real life, and also the function that Sir Dio fulfills for the Knights of the Highlands at their fortress monastery, the Ebonhold. We're also looking here, and you can compare the model's weaponry, which nothing on the waist for Diomedes, but you'll notice he's got this big Tetsubo, which is absolutely indicative of how he fights in Belegarth, and there'll be a picture probably right about here of him swinging his big old Tetsubo. I might also be in this picture, I can't remember off the top of my head. But Dio has kind of an interesting fighting style. He kind of picks up whatever's around, and he kind of goes back and forth between trying to be a sword and border and trying to be an archer and trying to be a red fighter, and kind of all over the place. He also sometimes fights with a sandwich. So kind of nailing down what his thing was hard. But I do remember just a look of sheer glee when he got his Tetsubo. So, of course, that's what I went with. And also, it's kind of an exotic weapon, which will lead me into kind of the character choices I made for him on a sheet. So he's kind of standing there, kind of walking forward. You can see that in one hand he's offering drink, which kind of hints towards his friendliness, but also he's got his weapon there at the ready, which will kind of show you like, okay, I'm happy to offer you a drink, but I'm also happy to smash you over the dome piece with this big old club. Dio's colors in Belegarth are black and gray. They are kind of hinted here under his armor, in the skirt and in the shirt that's present there under his armor. Dio is a Gelf in Belegarth, and so there on the stomach of the breastplate is the Gelf snake, kind of rendered in very simple terms. These are very small, and I mentioned before that their paintability is not all that great, so that's kind of my best kind of point at the Gelf snake. I'll try to get a good picture of it so I can include it here so you can see what's going on there. Also, I've chosen to do also, with the Tetsubo and then again with the rice hat, kind of a more Eastern feel for Dio. Even though at times his garb has spoken to that, I really felt like this model is kind of like a world traveler, and that'll be reflected in his character sheet. And so he's kind of gone everywhere and done everything, and so I really wanted the model to reflect that. Kind of the jovial personality, but also kind of like an Eastern influence in his combat and that kind of stuff, and that'll speak to the character. So there's the model. I'm really happy with that one. It was one of the first models I made on Hero Forge, and kind of thinking about capturing Diomedes' personality in a model, I think I just hit a home run with this one. So let's move on to the character sheet. Here you have the classes. Fighter 13, and then this is really where the weapon came in, Exotic Weapon Master 3. I've kind of always liked this character class, this Prestige class, this Exotic Weapon Master. It's only a 3-level Prestige class, but it lets you do some pretty nifty stuff with your exotic weapon, whether that be like a Dwarven Urgosh or a Gnome Pick, or in this case, Tetsubo. Human, red hair and beard, hazel eyes, and what's really important here is the deity. This gets me into talking about one of the longest running jokes in my role-playing career. A few years ago, at least 6, not quite 10, so somewhere in that range, one of my best friends, Nate Schreiner, featured here, we were joking around about, I think he had a dwarf cleric who was always drunk, and I asked him at one point when I was DMing, I was like, oh, what are you drinking? And he kind of blanked out, and he looked at me with like this, bizarre kind of like zoned out 1,000-yard stare, and he said, Red Knight Special Reserve. And so that became a staple of our campaigns. Almost everybody who's DM'd in our group has used Red Knight Special Reserve. Pip, who is a sword fighter, was kind enough to actually create a label for Red Knight Special Reserve. And so here it is. And so for 6 to 10 years, we've been talking about this mythical beer and how delicious it is, and it's divinely inspired and actually has like the divine grace that comes from the Red Knight, who is the goddess of strategy in Faerun. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do with the Knights of the Highlands, I'm like, oh, absolutely. If I need to make Dio involved somehow in brewing. Most of you probably know, if not, you're about to find out, that the primary form of income for monks, when we're talking European monks, not like Jackie Chan monks, was the making and selling of alcohol, and then of course also honey and things like that, bread, those things. And so monks are famous for their beers and their wines, and you get kind of these towns that crop up around monasteries, all driven on an alcohol-based economy. And so I thought, what better way for the Knights of the Highlands, who several of us are decent drinkers, to bring income into the fortress monastery? I mean, other than like, killing orcs and taking their stuff, which is a good business all on its own. What a better way to have a kind of medieval economy, an export, if you will, something we're known for, in the civilian world, than to export alcohol. So finally, for the whole world of Calicia, we have this person who makes Red Knight Special Reserve. So I was able to finally kind of bring this long joke around full circle. And then it also speaks to what Diomedes does for the Knights of the Highlands. He is their brewmaster. And it's not indicated on the character sheet. I took an early scan of the sheet, but it's on there now. That is his title. He is the master brewer and master distiller, because he makes both beer and spirits for the Knights of the Highlands. First character sheet, so that's kind of tied into that Red Knight, and I'll deal with that a little more when we get to the skills section. Strength 22, Dex 16, Con 18, Intelligence 13, Wisdom 13, Charisma 15. I think those, if you know Dio, those all pretty well fit. Grapple mod, obviously, base attack plus strength. He's got there that +2 Banishing Shadow Strike Tetsubo. Shadow Strike is a pretty neat ability. It lets you extend the range by striking through your own shadow, which I thought was very funny, and I think Dio would get a kick out of that with as much shenanigans as he gets into. But also remembering that these guys fight free magic beings, as referenced in my first video, that banishing becomes really important. And then if you chip down to the saving throws, 15 fort, 8 reflex, 7 will. He's got the AC there, and looking there at the armor worn, no shield for Dio. And then that +1 Menacing Breastplate. That Menacing Breastplate can create a fear aura, much like Sir Geoffrey's helm can. And so it's kind of a nifty thing for banishing large groups of small enemies. Moving on to page 2 here. It looks like I've also neglected to put Dio's experience points in, but anything that gets him to 16th level, same thing with Rems. Up, down, however close you want him to be to leveling. You can also level him back in Fighter. I would suggest that you not do that any further than 12, because then he loses his ability to go into... any lower than 10, because then he loses his ability to go into the Exotic Weapons Master, which kind of makes this character. So their possessions on person, the adventuring gear, I've mentioned what that is before. You can check out Rem's video if you want to know the specifics. Same with the Knight's livery. But here for the first time we have 2 specific places, and this will become a theme as we dig into some of the other Knights. They have specific jobs that they do. And so here Sir Diomedes has both a brewery and a distillery there in the Ebon Hold for the making of spirits. Getting into the magic items, there's quite a few magic items for Dio, as to be expected for the guy who's got most of the money, or at least he sees the money first, so he gets to take a little bit off the top. Or if there's ever a payment in a magic item, obviously he'll get first pick at it. He's got the Helm of Battle, Amulet of Natural Armor, and a Ring of Protection, which helps to bring up the AC and the lack of no shield. Counter-Strike bracers, the breastplate there. Shirt of the Fae, again, I mentioned I liked the shirts. They add DR. Also, Sandals of Calm add DR1. If you'll notice that Dio's model is not wearing boots. In fact, he's wearing like Roman-style or Asian-style sandals. It's hard to tell. The details not picked out, but he is wearing sandals instead of boots. That'll be distinct among the knights. And then right there, that Belt of Giant Strength +4. The kind of weapon that Dio uses, those big, heavy, bludgeoning Tetsubo, really benefits from the extra strength, being able to deliver strength and a half. Obviously, it's a +2 with the magic ability, so hitting for Dio is really important. He is not quite a glass cannon. He's very survivable. He's got quite a few hit points. But those magic items, and particularly the Counter-Strike bracers, all make for a character that will punish you for not hitting them and punishing you for hitting them. So it's kind of a think twice before you step into a fight with this character, which is always how I feel about Dio. I always find myself being surprised by some of the stuff he does on the field, and so I kind of wanted to bring that to his character sheet. Just like Remen Warghoul, and I promise I'll get someone up here soon who has some stuff on this third page, but just like Remen Warghoul, though that third page is blank, no magic for Dio, no familiar, no rage, no psionics, so nothing on that third page. And then popping over to the fourth page, which kind of gets us back to this kind of brewery idea. If you look there, kind of calling out the signature skills, he's got a synergy between craft and profession. He's got profession, brewer, and distiller, each with a +12. And then he's got craft beer, craft spirits, each also at a +12. And then one of the things that he had to have for going into exotic weapons proficiency was a certain number of ranks in craft weapon. And so he's also a weaponsmith, although for the Knights of the Highlands, he doesn't do that often, but if there is something that needs special attention, he can advise. It's kind of a previous life kind of thing for Diomedes before he got into brewing and distilling and came to the Knights, and so it's kind of a leftover fluff-wise or lore-wise of a previous life. And so then I want to look, also a 16 swim, that's just kind of how it worked out. With how I put it in, Dio loves swimming, and so I wanted to make sure he could do that even in armor if he had to. Looking back up then at, Dio's got pretty solid skills all the way around. Handle animals at a 13, intimidates at a 13, so he's kind of well equipped to do what he does. Again, there's not many skills because of the 2 classes, so they're pretty well maxed out at what I could give them. I want to point then at the racial traits class features for the exotic weapon master. So he's got exotic sunder, and this lets you make an increased awesome sunder attack with an exotic weapon. So that Tetsubo, which is already hard, already heavy, already magical, he gets an additional sunder attempt, so Dio can literally smash steel shields with a high enough roll. He's got show off, which lets him do something fancy, or more likely in Dio's case stupid, and kind of intimidate people and they'll run away. And then he's got trip attack, which, when you're using a Tetsubo to trip someone, it's less knocking them over and more like breaking a kneecap, which I think that Dio would in particular find funny and perfect kind of for his character. And then, looking at those feats, he's base fighter, so ton of feats, makes him kind of a combat expert. Exotic weapon proficiency Tetsubo, so he can use it. Weapon focus, weapon specialization, greater weapon focus, greater weapon specialization, so he's hitting really hard. Power attack cleave, great cleave, combat expertise. He's got that improved trip, which works with the exotic trip. He's got the improved sunder, which benefits the exotic sunder. He's got combat reflexes, which lets him hit, lots of extra people. And then, of course, improved critical, because why wouldn't you, with a giant weapon like that, have improved critical? Especially if you're in the fighter tree. You save money then on the equipment needing to make that magic, that Tetsubo impact to expand its crit range. So all in all, Dio is a very capable combatant, especially if you're putting him on a on a D&D field, and then looking at his role in the Knights of the Highlands, he is responsible for most of the income that comes to them for non-violent means. So I think the model, when you kind of take all those things into consideration, the way he fights, the fact that he's a brewer and a distiller, the fact that he is responsible for the income, all those things kind of like are reflected in the model. Initially, the model had a cheesy grin, which you kind of get to see, but it's not really all that present because, again, the detailing isn't great, but it's there. And then the kind of last things for Dio are his languages, which are reflective of his fellow Knights of the Highlands. So this is a preview of what's coming. Dwarven and Elven are languages. They're cooperative languages, not combative languages. You'll notice that there's no favorite enemy. There's no language of a monstrous race or anything. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking at with Dio. It's all cooperative. It's all team-based, and certainly he fulfills a vital role and is valued for his impact there in the Ebon Hold. So that's Diomedes. So thanks again for tuning in. We should be seeing the next video 5 soon, and hopefully it'll be someone. I'm fairly certain here in the next couple of videos we're going to get somebody with some stuff on that third page of the character sheet. Thanks again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time.